It was a quiet morning, the kind you get in a small American town where the loudest sound is the birds waking up. Daniel Walker was on his way to work, walking the same route he took every single day to the local hardware store. The air was still cool, and the streets were just beginning to stir. Shopkeepers were rolling up their metal grates, and the smell of fresh coffee drifted out from a nearby cafe. To anyone watching, it was just another Tuesday. But for Daniel, the calm of the morning was a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside him. The last few months had been relentless. It felt like he was running on a treadmill that was constantly speeding up. The bills were piling up, each one a little paper monster demanding to be fed. To keep up, he'd been taking every overtime shift he could get, working until his body ached and his mind was numb. Sleep didn't offer much escape. He'd just lie there, replaying his financial worries like a broken record. The weight of it all, the constant stress, the feeling of being trapped had become his new normal. As he walked, he was lost in these thoughts, mentally calculating how he was going to stretch his next paycheck to cover everything. It was a familiar, frustrating puzzle with no easy solution. Just then, as he passed the old bus stop with its faded green bench, something on the sidewalk broke through his mental fog. It was a patch of dark brown against the gray concrete. A wallet, a simple, well-worn leather wallet, lying there all alone. He stopped, his train of thought completely derailed. He glanced up and down the street. It was practically empty, save for a car turning a corner far down the road. Who could have dropped it? Maybe someone on the early bus. He hesitated for a second, then bent down and picked it up. The moment his fingers closed around the leather, he knew this was no ordinary lost wallet. It was heavy, thick, and packed full. He opened the clasp and his breath caught in his throat. Tucked inside were the usual things you'd expect: credit cards, a driver's license, some business cards. But behind them, nestled in the main compartment, was a thick, neat stack of $100 bills. Daniel had never seen so much cash in one place, let alone held it in his own hands. He quickly, almost nervously, thumbed through the bills. He didn't count it precisely, but he knew it was thousands of dollars. Enough to clear his debts, enough to fix his car, enough to finally breathe. His heart started hammering against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the quiet morning. He looked around again, more urgently this time. Still nobody. The street was empty. It felt like the world had frozen, leaving just him, this wallet, and a life-changing decision. A voice, a desperate, practical voice in his head, started whispering, "This is it, Daniel. This is the answer. No one will ever know. Just take it. Your problems are over." It was a powerful, seductive thought. The money represented a way out, a magical solution to the stress that was crushing him. He could just walk away, and his life would be instantly, dramatically better. He pictured himself paying off his credit cards, one by one. The relief, the freedom, it was almost a physical sensation. But then another voice, quieter but steadier, pushed its way through. It was the voice of his father, the voice of his own conscience. It reminded him that this wallet didn't just appear out of thin air, it belonged to someone. Someone who was probably, at this very moment, in a state of sheer panic. Someone whose day, whose week, maybe even whose month, was about to be ruined. He glanced at the ID. The face staring back was that of an older man with kind eyes and a warm smile. Daniel imagined that man reaching into his pocket and finding it empty. The sudden shock, the cold dread, the frantic search. That man might have his own bills to pay, a family to support. This money could be for rent, for a medical procedure, for anything. Daniel stood there, paralyzed by the two opposing forces warring inside him. The world around him started to come back into focus, the distant sound of traffic, the chirping of birds. He was holding a stranger's life in his hands. On one side was a shortcut to his own happiness, a release from the burdens that kept him up at night. On the other was doing the right thing, returning what wasn't his, even if it meant going back to his own struggles. The weight of the wallet suddenly felt immense, not because of the cash, but because of the moral dilemma it represented. Every second that ticked by felt like an hour. What should he do? The easy path was so tempting, but was it the right one? The choice he made in the next few minutes would define not just his day, but the kind of person he truly was. As he kept walking, Daniel couldn't stop thinking. His mind raced, playing out every single possibility. If he kept the cash, he could finally catch up on rent. He could buy a full cart of groceries, not just the bare essentials. It was the most money he'd seen in months. A lifeline dropped right at his feet. But then, the other thought crept in. Returning it meant giving up that lifeline. It meant going back to the constant worrying, the gnawing hunger, the feeling of being one step away from disaster. His pace slowed down, each step feeling heavier than the last, as if the weight of the decision was physically pulling him down. His thoughts grew louder, more confusing, a storm inside his head. He found a nearby bench and sank onto it, the worn wood cold against his legs. He just sat there for a long time, staring at the worn leather wallet in his hands, wrestling with this impossible choice in complete silence. The city bustled around him, people laughing, cars honking, but for Daniel, the world had gone quiet. There was only him, the wallet, and the two paths stretching out before him. One path promised immediate relief, a temporary escape from his struggles. The other, well, he wasn't sure what the other path promised, but it felt like the right one, even if it was the harder one. He felt a knot in his stomach tighten. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about who he was and who he wanted to be. He sighed, a long, weary sound that seemed to carry all his troubles with it. After what felt like an eternity, Daniel's fingers fumbled with the clasp of the wallet. He opened it again, maybe hoping for a sign, for something to make the decision for him. And that's when he saw it, tucked away in a clear plastic sleeve. It wasn't more money. It was a small, slightly faded photograph. An elderly man with kind eyes and a warm smile, surrounded by his family, a woman who looked like his wife, and a few younger people, probably his kids or grandkids, all of them beaming with happiness. The photo was worn at the edges, clearly cherished. That simple image struck Daniel with unexpected force. It was like a jolt, pulling him out of his own head. Suddenly, this wasn't just a faceless wallet full of cash. It belonged to a real person, a person with a family who loved him. A person who was probably, at this very moment, in a state of absolute panic. Daniel could almost feel the man's distress, the frantic searching of pockets, the sinking feeling in his gut as he realized his wallet was gone. He imagined the man worrying not just about the money, but about the IDs, the credit cards, and that precious family photo. He took one long, deep breath, held it, and then let it out slowly. And with that breath, the internal conflict, the storm in his mind, finally settled. The decision was made. He pulled out the driver's license, his eyes scanning for an address. He found it. It wasn't too far away. He knew what he had to do. No matter how tough his own life was, no matter how much he needed that money, he was going to return it. Honesty, he told himself, that's what matters. It's worth more than a few weeks of easier living. It was about being the kind of person that little boy in the park would look up to. It was about being the kind of person he could be proud of. With a newfound sense of purpose, Daniel stood up from the bench, his steps now light and determined. The weight was gone. He clutched the wallet tightly, not as a temptation, but as a mission. He started walking again, this time with a clear direction, heading towards the address on the ID, ready to do the right thing. As he walked through the unfamiliar neighborhood, a new set of worries began to surface. What if the man wasn't home? What if he thought Daniel was the one who stole it in the first place? He pictured the door opening to suspicion, to accusation. His heart started to beat a little faster. This wasn't as simple as just handing it over. He rehearsed what he would say in his head. "Hello, sir, I believe you dropped this." No, that sounded too formal. "Hey, I found your wallet." Too casual. He shook his head, trying to clear the anxious thoughts. It didn't matter. He just had to be honest. The address led him to a modest, well-kept house with a small garden in the front. Colorful flowers bloomed in neat rows, and a bird feeder hung from a tree, swaying gently in the breeze. It looked like a peaceful home. Daniel took another deep breath, walked up the path, and raised his hand to knock on the solid wooden door. Before his knuckles could even touch it, the door swung open. The elderly man from the photograph stood there, his face etched with worry. He was on the phone, and Daniel could hear him saying, ... No, I've checked everywhere. It's just gone. The man's eyes met Daniel's. He looked tired and defeated. He lowered the phone, his expression shifting to one of confusion. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice strained. Daniel's own voice felt caught in his throat for a second. He held out the wallet. I think this belongs to you," Daniel said, his voice a little shaky. "I found it in the park." The man's eyes widened. He stared at the wallet, then back at Daniel, and then at the wallet again, as if he couldn't believe it. He slowly took it, his hands trembling slightly. He fumbled it open, his gaze immediately going to the small photograph. A wave of immense relief washed over his face, so visible it was almost tangible. The tension left his shoulders, and the worrying in his eyes was replaced with a glimmer of something else. Gratitude. "Oh, my goodness," the man breathed out, looking up at Daniel. I can't believe it. I thought it was gone for good." He quickly checked the cash compartment. "It's all here," he said, his voice filled with astonishment. "Everything is still here." He looked at Daniel, truly seeing him for the first time. He saw his worn-out clothes, his tired expression. And he understood. He knew the temptation Daniel must have faced. "Young man," the man began, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means to me. Thank you. Truly, thank you." He reached into the wallet and started to pull out the cash. "Please," he said, trying to hand Daniel a significant portion of it. "You have to let me give you a reward for your honesty." Daniel immediately shook his head, taking a step back. "No, sir, I can't take it," he said firmly but gently. "I didn't do it for a reward. I just wanted to do the right thing." The man, whose name was Arthur, looked at Daniel with a newfound respect. He saw not just a poor young man, but a person of incredible integrity. "What's your name?" Arthur asked. "Daniel," he replied. "Well, Daniel," Arthur said, putting the money back in his wallet. "You've restored my faith in people today. Honesty like yours is rare. It's priceless." Arthur insisted Daniel come inside for a moment. He introduced him to his wife, Maria, who was just as grateful. They offered him a warm meal, and for the first time in a long time, Daniel didn't have to worry about where his next meal was coming from. As they sat and talked, Daniel found himself opening up about his struggles losing his job, trying to find work, the constant pressure of just trying to survive. Arthur listened intently, nodding with empathy. It turned out that Arthur was a retired business owner. He still had many connections in the city. He saw the potential in Daniel, the same character and strength it took to return that wallet. Before Daniel left, Arthur gave him something far more valuable than a cash reward. He gave him his personal business card. "Call me on Monday morning," Arthur said with a smile. "I know a few people who are looking for a reliable, trustworthy man like you. I think we can find you something much better than just a job." Daniel walked away from the house that evening feeling a sense of hope he hadn't felt in years. The air felt lighter. The city lights seemed brighter. He hadn't just returned a wallet, he had opened a door to a new future. He realized that true wealth wasn't about the money in your pocket. It was about the richness of your character. And by choosing honesty, by choosing to be a good person, he had gained something far more valuable than he could have ever imagined. His journey was far from over, but for the first time, he felt like he was finally on the right path. If you were moved by Daniel's story, don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button. We love sharing stories that inspire and remind us of the good in the world. The town seemed to stretch on forever as Daniel began his walk, the address from the ID card his only guide. It was a simple piece of plastic, but it held a destination, a purpose. He clutched the worn leather wallet tightly in his hand, a small found treasure that didn't belong to him. With each step, the air grew crisper, a chill biting at his cheeks and nipping at his fingers. The sun, which had been bright and optimistic just a short while ago, started to dip lower, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock his slow progress. He pulled his jacket tighter, the cold seeping through the fabric, but his resolve didn't waver. This was more than just returning a lost item. It felt like a mission, a small act of rightness in a world that often felt chaotic. He pictured the owner, wondering who they were, what this wallet meant to them. Was it just cash and cards, or did it hold sentimental value? A faded photo? A special note? The thought spurred him on, his pace quickening despite the fatigue setting in his legs. The journey was long, taking him through familiar streets and then into parts of town he'd never seen before. The landscape changed from bustling storefronts to quiet residential lanes. The houses grew larger, set back from the road with manicured lawns. He checked the address on his phone again, a blue dot inching closer and closer to its target. He was an outsider here, a traveler on a quest, and the growing darkness didn't make him feel any more welcome. Yet, he kept going, fueled by a simple, powerful idea: do the right thing. As Daniel finally turned onto the correct street, a wave of apprehension washed over him. The houses were neat and tidy, with warm lights glowing in the windows, painting cozy scenes of family life. It felt like a world away from his own. He located the house number, a polished brass plate gleaming under the porch light. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, his heart starting to beat a little faster. 100 different scenarios ran through his mind, each one more daunting than the last. What if they didn't believe his story? What if they accused him of stealing something, of taking money before deciding to return it? The thought made his stomach churn. It would be so much easier to just drop it in a mailbox, to let the postal service handle it. But he had come this far, he owed it to the owner and to himself to see this through. Taking a deep, shaky breath, he walked up the stone path, his footsteps echoing in the quiet evening air. The porch was welcoming, with a hanging plant swaying gently in the breeze. It felt strangely calm, a stark contrast to the storm of anxiety brewing inside him. He raised his hand, hesitating for a second before his knuckles made contact with the solid wood of the door. The sound was loud, definitive. There was no turning back now. He waited, his ears straining for any sound from within, his body tense with anticipation. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. The lock clicked, and the door creaked open, revealing an elderly man with kind, tired eyes and a halo of white hair. He looked at Daniel, a polite but questioning expression on his face. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice soft and a little frail. Daniel's own voice felt caught in his throat. He swallowed hard, trying to summon the words he had rehearsed in his head. Instead of speaking, he simply held up the wallet. The man's eyes flickered down to Daniel's outstretched hand, and in an instant, his entire demeanor changed. The confusion melted away, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated relief. His eyes widened, and they seemed to shine with unshed tears. "My wallet," he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. I thought it was gone forever." He introduced himself as Mr. Harrison and explained the panic he'd felt since realizing it was missing. He had retraced his steps, called the stores he'd visited, and searched his car from top to bottom, all to no avail. His voice shook as he took the wallet from Daniel's hand, his fingers tracing the familiar, worn leather. "Thank you," he said, his gaze meeting Daniel's, filled with a gratitude so profound it was almost overwhelming. "Thank you, young man. You have no idea what this means to me." Mr. Harrison opened the wallet, his hands trembling slightly as he sorted through its contents. He pulled out his driver's license, a few credit cards, and then a small, folded photograph tucked into a hidden pocket. He looked at the picture, a gentle smile gracing his lips, before carefully putting it back. "Everything's here," he said, looking up at Daniel, his eyes glistening. "Absolutely everything. I don't know how to thank you." Daniel just offered a small, shy smile in return. "I'm just glad I found you," he said quietly. "I saw the address on your ID and hoped it would get back to you safely." Mr. Harrison insisted on giving Daniel a reward, pulling out a handful of bills from the cash compartment. But Daniel politely refused, shaking his head. "No, sir, I couldn't," he said. "Doing the right thing is its own reward." The old man looked at him, a newfound respect in his eyes. He saw not just a stranger who had found his wallet, but a young man of integrity and kindness. This simple act of honesty had forged a connection between them, a moment of shared humanity that transcended age and circumstance. The chill of the evening air no longer seemed to bother Daniel. He was filled with a warmth that had nothing to do with the weather, a deep, quiet satisfaction that settled in his soul. He had started the day with a simple walk and ended it by restoring a piece of someone's life. And in doing so, he had reaffirmed his own belief in the quiet power of goodness. As he said his goodbyes and walked away from the warm glow of Mr. Harrison's porch, he carried that feeling with him, a light to guide him on his journey home. Mr. Harrison waved Daniel over, inviting him inside for a moment. Daniel, feeling a bit out of place in the grand entryway, followed him to a small, elegant table. As they sat down, the elderly man looked at him with kind, inquisitive eyes. "Tell me, young man," he said, his voice gentle, "how did you come to find my wallet?" Daniel took a deep breath and recounted the entire story, starting from the moment he spotted the leather wallet lying on the wet pavement. He didn't hold back. He spoke about the temptation he felt, the internal battle that waged within him. He was honest about his situation, explaining how he'd been laid off, how the bills were piling up, and how desperate he had become to find work to support his family. He confessed that the money in that wallet could have solved his immediate problems, but he knew it wouldn't have been the right thing to do. It wasn't his, and the thought of taking it felt heavier than any financial burden he was carrying. Throughout his explanation, Mr. Harrison listened intently, his expression unreadable. He didn't interrupt, simply letting Daniel speak his truth. When Daniel finished, a profound silence hung in the air for a moment. Then, a warm, genuine smile spread across Mr. Harrison's face, reaching his eyes. He nodded slowly, a look of deep appreciation in his gaze. "Daniel," he began, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you not just for returning my wallet, but for your honesty." He leaned forward slightly. In this day and age, that kind of integrity is a rare and precious thing. Many people would have made a different choice, especially under your circumstances. He paused, looking at Daniel with a newfound respect. "I am a firm believer that good things happen to good people. When you choose to do the right thing, especially when it's the hardest thing to do, the universe has a way of rewarding you. You've shown incredible character today, and that will not go unnoticed." Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't expected this kind of understanding. He simply mumbled a thank you and, after a few more pleasantries, he left Mr. Harrison's home, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in months. He had no money in his pocket, but his heart felt full. The following afternoon, as Daniel was helping his son with his homework, his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. He almost ignored it, thinking it was just another telemarketer, but something urged him to answer. "Hello, is this Daniel?" a professional-sounding voice asked on the other end. "Yes, this is he," Daniel replied, a bit cautiously. "I'm calling from Summit Construction," the man continued. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. Summit Construction was one of the largest and most respected firms in the city. He had sent them his resume months ago, following up several times with no response. He had eventually given up hope, assuming his application was lost in a sea of others. "We received your application a while back," the man said, "and I'll be honest, it was in a pile we hadn't gotten to yet. However, your name came up today. You were highly recommended by someone we hold in very high regard." Daniel was utterly bewildered. Recommended? By whom? He hadn't spoken to anyone in the industry for weeks. He couldn't think of a single person who would have that kind of influence. He stammered, "I'm sorry, I'm a bit surprised." "May I ask who recommended me?" The man on the phone chuckled lightly. He preferred to remain anonymous, but he said you were a man of exceptional character. "That's the kind of person we want at Summit. We'd like to bring you in for an interview tomorrow morning. Are you available?" Daniel felt a surge of adrenaline and disbelief. He quickly agreed to the interview, his mind racing to figure out who his mysterious benefactor could be. After he hung up the phone, completely dazed, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text message. He opened it, and his eyes widened as he read the words on the screen. It was from a number he didn't recognize, but the message was clear. It said, "I made a call for you. You deserve it." It could only be one person, Mr. Harrison. Daniel stared at the message, the pieces clicking into place. Mr. Harrison must have been the H from the inscription in the wallet. Harrison. He wasn't just a wealthy old man. He was clearly a very influential one. He had seen Daniel's character and had decided to do more than just say thank you. He had given him a chance, an opportunity that could change everything for him and his family. A single act of honesty had opened a door he thought was permanently closed. Tears welled up in Daniel's eyes, but this time, they were tears of overwhelming gratitude. He looked over at his son, still focused on his homework, and then at his wife, who was watching him with a hopeful smile. His life was about to change, not because of a stroke of luck, but because of a choice. A choice to be honest, to be a good man, even when no one was watching. He knew this was just the beginning. The interview was tomorrow, and he would have to prove himself. But for the first time in a very long time, Daniel felt a powerful sense of hope. He had his integrity, and now he had a real shot at building the future his family deserved. Within just a few days, Daniel walked through the doors of his new job. It felt surreal. He started his new role, and almost immediately, his life began to change in ways he could never have anticipated. His income didn't just increase, it doubled. Suddenly, the constant, crushing weight of financial stress that had been his shadow for years started to lift. He could breathe again. The gnawing anxiety that kept him up at night began to fade, replaced by a sense of calm he hadn't felt in a very long time. But it wasn't just about the money. The transformation ran much deeper. He found himself walking with a lighter step, a genuine smile gracing his lips more often than not. The world, which had seemed so gray and unforgiving, was now painted in brighter, more hopeful colors. He started engaging more with his colleagues, sharing jokes and contributing ideas with a newfound confidence that surprised even himself. This wasn't the same Daniel who had been hunched over by defeat just a week ago. This was a new man, one who believed in his own capabilities and his own worth. Looking back, he realized the turning point wasn't finding a new job or earning more money. The real change started the moment he decided to return that wallet. It was an act of integrity, a choice made when no one was watching. And that single decision set off a chain reaction. It wasn't about a reward, it was about the profound realization that someone, a complete stranger, saw him. Not for his worn-out clothes or his desperate situation, but for his character. Mr. Harrison's trust was a mirror reflecting a version of Daniel that he had forgotten existed, an honest, respectable man. That belief became the foundation upon which he started to rebuild his life. Every morning, as he got ready for work, he remembered that moment. It was a constant reminder that our choices, especially the small, seemingly insignificant ones, define who we are. They have the power to alter our path in the most unexpected ways. The money in the wallet could have provided a temporary fix, a fleeting solution to his problems. But the act of returning it gave him something far more valuable, the return of his own self-respect. He started reconnecting with old friends he had pushed away out of shame. He called his family more often, not to ask for help, but to share his good news, to laugh, and to listen. The relationships that had frayed under the strain of his struggles began to mend. He even started volunteering at a local community center on weekends, wanting to pay forward the kindness he had been shown. He wanted to be for someone else what Mr. Harrison had been for him, a beacon of hope. Months turned into a year. Daniel was thriving. He was promoted at his new company, recognized for his hard work and dedication. He moved into a nicer apartment in a better neighborhood. But more importantly, he was happy, genuinely, deeply happy. He had discovered that true wealth wasn't measured by a bank account, but by peace of mind, strong relationships, and a clear conscience. One afternoon, he found himself walking past the same park bench where his life had taken its dramatic turn. He sat down, a wave of gratitude washing over him. He pulled out his own wallet, now comfortably full, and thought about the incredible journey. It was a testament to the idea that doing the right thing, even when it's the hardest thing, can unlock a future you never thought possible. It wasn't magic. It was the simple, powerful law of character. His honesty hadn't just returned a lost wallet, it had returned Daniel to himself. The transformation was complete, not because his circumstances had changed, but because he had changed from within.
The city can feel like a lonely place sometimes, can't it? We're all rushing around, caught up in our own worlds, our own deadlines, our own worries. It's so easy to feel invisible, like just another face in a sea of strangers. But every now and then, something happens. A small, unexpected moment that pierces through the noise and reminds you of the quiet kindness that connects us all. This is a story about one of those moments. Imagine a small, cozy cafe tucked away on a side street. The air smells like roasted coffee beans and warm pastries. A young woman is sitting alone at a corner table. She's been nursing the same cup of coffee for almost an hour, her gaze distant. Every few minutes her hand drifts to her purse, opening it to look at the few coins inside, her brow furrowed with a worry that seems too heavy for the cheerful cafe. She's trying to figure out how she's going to pay her bill. The number on the small slip of paper the waiter just left on her table feels like a mountain she can climb. Her heart sinks. She feels a knot of panic tightening in her chest, that familiar feeling of being completely and utterly alone with her problem. She just stares at the bill, frozen, unsure of what to do next. At a nearby table, a man has been quietly reading a book. He's noticed her. He saw the flicker of anxiety in her eyes when she checked her wallet, the way her shoulders slumped when the bill arrived. He understands that look. It's a look that needs no translation. It speaks of a struggle, a moment of vulnerability we've all felt at some point in our lives. He doesn't stare. He doesn't make a show of it. He just observes, with a sense of quiet empathy. He sees not just a stranger, but a fellow human being caught in a difficult moment. And in that instant, he decides to act. Without a word, without drawing any attention to himself, he closes his book, stands up, and walks over to the counter. He hands over some cash, covering his own bill and hers as well. He doesn't ask for thanks, he doesn't wait for recognition. He simply does it. It's a small act, almost invisible, but it's an act of pure, unconditional kindness. He then picks up his coat and walks out of the cafe, disappearing back into the bustling city street as anonymously as he arrived. He leaves behind nothing but the echo of a good deed. A few moments later, the young woman finally gathers the courage to approach the counter, ready to explain her situation, her face flushed with embarrassment. But before she can speak, the cashier gives her a warm smile and says, "It's all taken care of." The woman is stunned. "What? By who?" she asks, looking around the now half-empty cafe. The cashier just shrugs gently. "A gentleman who just left. He said to have a nice day." Relief washes over her, so powerful it almost brings her to tears. She looks towards the door, at the stream of people passing by, trying to guess which one was her anonymous guardian angel. She will never know his name. She will never get to thank him. But that act of kindness changed everything for her that day. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the message. It told her that she wasn't invisible, that someone saw her, someone understood, and someone cared. In a world that often feels cold and indifferent, a stranger's quiet generosity became a beacon of light, a profound reminder that we are all connected, and that a little bit of kindness can make all the difference. It's a story that proves goodness doesn't need a spotlight, it just needs a heart willing to give. With my heart still pounding, I walked over to his table. The rain was still coming down hard outside, a dramatic soundtrack to this weirdly cinematic moment. He looked up as I approached, and the book he was reading was one of my favorites. "What are the odds?" "Excuse me," I started, my voice a little shaky. "I had just wanted to thank you for the coffee. You really didn't have to do that." He offered a small, gentle smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. There was something else there, something deeper. "It was nothing," he said, his voice calm and steady, like a quiet river. "You looked like you needed it. No thanks necessary." I stood there for a second, feeling a bit awkward but also incredibly drawn to him. "But why? You don't even know me." He closed his book, marking his page with a worn leather bookmark. "Sometimes, a simple act of kindness is its own reward. Besides," he added, and his gaze seemed to look right through me. It felt like the right thing to do. His eyes, that's what I couldn't get over. They were kind, incredibly so, but they held a profound sadness, a sort of nostalgic ache that I couldn't place. It was a look I felt I had seen before, a long, long time ago, in a dream or a forgotten memory. It was unsettlingly familiar, "Do I know you from somewhere?" I finally asked, the question tumbling out before I could stop it. The feeling was just too strong to ignore. He just looked at me for a long moment, that same sad smile playing on his lips. He didn't answer my question directly. Instead, he stood up, grabbing his coat from the back of the chair. "Enjoy your coffee," he said softly. "And the book, it has a wonderful ending." And just like that, before I could say another word, before I could ask his name or why he looked at me with such sorrowful recognition, he turned and walked to the door. He gave me one last glance over his shoulder, a look that felt like a goodbye, and then he stepped out of the cafe. I rushed to the window, peering through the rain-streaked glass. I watched him pull up the collar of his coat and melt into the crowd of umbrellas and hurried footsteps on the bustling street. In a matter of seconds, he was gone, vanished, as if he were never really there at all. I was left standing alone in the warm, cozy cafe, the gifted coffee still steaming on my table. My mind was racing. Who was he? Why did a complete stranger buy me coffee and then disappear like a ghost? And that feeling, that strange, powerful feeling of familiarity, it wasn't just a fleeting sense of déjà vu. It was a deep, resonant echo in my soul, a whisper from a past I couldn't quite grasp. I sat back down, my thoughts a tangled mess of confusion and intrigue. The mystery of the man with the sad eyes lingered in the air, long after he had disappeared into the rain. I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that this wasn't the end of the story. It felt like a beginning. The walk home feels different tonight. The usual chill in the air doesn't seem to bite as hard, and the familiar path is cast in a new, softer light. I find myself replaying the moment over and over, his face etched into my memory. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the gentle tone of his voice, it was more than just simple kindness. There's something about him, an inexplicable feeling of familiarity. It's like a song you've heard once, long ago, but can't quite remember the name of. I've seen him before. I'm almost sure of it, but where? The question buzzes in my mind, a persistent hum against the quiet backdrop of the sleeping city. I try to place him. Was it at a coffee shop I frequent? Maybe a class from college years ago. Or perhaps just a face I passed on a crowded street, one among thousands. None of these scenarios feel quite right. The feeling is deeper, more resonant, as if our paths had crossed in a more significant way. It's a strange sensation, like a forgotten dream trying to surface. I can almost grasp the memory, but it dissolves like smoke the moment I get too close. It's frustrating, yet intriguing. Who is he? And why does the thought of him feel like a missing piece of a puzzle I didn't even know I was solving? The night deepens, and the streetlights cast long, dancing shadows ahead of me. I pull my coat a little tighter, not so much against the cold, but more as a way to hold onto this warmth that has blossomed in my chest. It's a warmth that has nothing to do with the weather, and everything to do with an unexpected connection. A stranger, as simple act of kindness has somehow managed to change the entire landscape of my evening, turning a mundane walk home into a journey of introspection and wonder. It's funny how a small moment, a fleeting interaction, can have such a profound impact. It reminds me that there's still so much magic hidden in the everyday, waiting to be discovered. I pick up my pace, my footsteps echoing a steady rhythm on the pavement. The quicker I walk, the faster my heart seems to beat, a mix of excitement and curiosity. I try to focus on the concrete details. His dark hair, the worn leather of his jacket, the way he tilted his head when he listened. Each detail is sharp and clear, yet the context, the where, remains a frustrating blur. It's as if my mind has a perfect photograph of him, but has lost the album it belongs to. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. Maybe he just has one of those familiar faces. But my intuition tells me it's more than that. It's a pull, a thread of connection that feels too strong to be a mere coincidence. As I finally reach my front door, fumbling for my keys, I make a silent promise to myself. I won't let this feeling just fade away. This strange, beautiful mystery has sparked something within me, a sense of adventure in the ordinary. I want to know who he is. I need to understand this feeling of déjà vu that surrounds him. The cold metal of the key feels solid in my hand as I unlock the door, a grounding sensation after a walk filled with so much ethereal thought. Stepping inside, the warmth of my home greets me, but it's the new internal warmth that I carry with me, a glowing ember from a chance encounter. This isn't the end of the story. It feels like the beginning. I have a feeling I'll be seeing him again, and next time I'll be ready to find out why he feels like coming home. The next day, a strange sense of anticipation hung in the air, a feeling I couldn't quite shake. It was just an ordinary Tuesday, and my only plan was a quick trip to the grocery store. The sun was bright, casting long shadows on the sidewalk as I walked. I grabbed a shopping cart, the wheels squeaking a familiar tune on the linoleum floor. I started down the first aisle, my mind a jumble of lists and errands. Bread, milk, eggs, the usual. As I rounded the corner into the produce section, my heart did a little jump. There he was, standing near the automatic doors, the same stranger from yesterday. He wasn't shopping, he was just watching. His gaze drifted over the people coming and going, a quiet observer in the bustling chaos of the store. He had that same thoughtful, almost distant look on his face. The fluorescent lights caught the strands of his dark hair, and for a moment, he seemed like a character straight out of a movie. My curiosity got the better of me. It had to be more than a coincidence, right? Seeing him twice in 2 days, in 2 different places? I abandoned my cart near the apples and started walking towards him. My steps felt slow, deliberate, as if I were moving through water. I tried to come up with something to say, something casual and not at all weird. Fancy seeing you here, felt too cliché. Are you following me? Sounded accusatory. As I got closer, I could see the details I'd missed before. The slight furrow of his brow, the way his hands were tucked into the pockets of his jacket. He must have sensed my approach because his posture tensed. I opened my mouth to speak, to say something, anything. But before a single word could escape, his eyes darted towards me for a fraction of a second. There was a flash of something in them: surprise. Panic? I couldn't be sure. He didn't give me a chance to find out. He turned abruptly, his back to me, and pushed his way through the glass doors. He moved with a sudden urgency that was jarring. I stood there, frozen, watching as he blended into the crowd on the street. One moment he was there, a solid, intriguing presence, and the next, he was gone, just like that, vanished. I was left standing by the entrance, the cool draft from the open doors washing over me. The cheerful beep of a cash register pulled me back to reality. What just happened? My mind was racing. He was so clearly avoiding me. The nervousness was palpable. It wasn't just shyness. It felt like he was genuinely afraid of being seen, of being spoken to. I walked back to my abandoned cart, the mundane task of grocery shopping, now feeling surreal. As I picked out avocados, my thoughts were a million miles away. Who was this man? And why did he seem so determined to stay a mystery? The encounter didn't scare me. Instead, it ignited a fire of intrigue. It was no longer just a coincidence. This was a puzzle, and I felt an undeniable pull to find the missing pieces. Every instinct told me our paths were meant to cross, but I was beginning to wonder if he would ever let them. The grocery store felt different now, charged with the energy of our... I finished my shopping in a daze, the image of him disappearing into the crowd replaying in my mind. This was far from over. I knew, somehow, that I would see him again. The question was, what would happen then? Finally, back in the comfort of my own home, I let out a long sigh of relief. The day had been an emotional roller coaster, to say the least. I tossed my keys onto the counter and let my bag drop to the floor with a thud. Exhaustion washed over me. All I wanted was to kick off my shoes, make a cup of tea, and try to forget the strange encounter at the cafe. But as my bag hit the floor, something small slid out and landed face up on the rug. Curious, I bent down to pick it up. It was a photograph, faded and worn around the edges, clearly old. I didn't recognize it at all. How on earth did this get into my bag? I turned it over in my hands. The picture showed a man with a warm, kind smile, holding a little girl on his shoulders. The girl was beaming, her pigtails flying out to the side as if she was laughing with pure, unadulterated joy. A wave of nostalgia hit me, even though the memory wasn't mine. It felt so familiar, so warm. I looked closer at the man's face, tracing the lines around his eyes with my thumb. And then, my heart stopped. A jolt, like an electric shock, shot through me. My breath caught in my throat, and the world seemed to slow down. It couldn't be. It was impossible. But there was no mistaking it. The man in the photograph, the man holding that little girl, was him, the stranger from the cafe, the man who paid for my coffee and left without a word. It was his face, his eyes, his smile, exactly the same. I sank onto the floor, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me. My mind was racing, trying to connect the dots. How did this picture get into my bag? I never saw him put anything in there. Was it an accident? A mistake? Or was it intentional? And who was the little girl? Was it me? The idea seemed crazy, yet a small, forgotten corner of my heart stirred with a strange sense of recognition. 1,000 questions swirled in my head, each one more bewildering than the last. I had a feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger story. Driven by a need for answers, I decided to visit Mrs. Eleanor Vance, a woman whose roots in this neighborhood run deeper than the old oak trees lining the streets. She's lived here for over 60 years, a living archive of our community's history. I found her tending to her prize-winning roses, her hands weathered by time but her eyes as sharp as ever. I greeted her, my heart thumping a nervous rhythm against my ribs. After a bit of small talk about the weather and her beautiful garden, I finally worked up the courage to show her the photograph. I pulled out the creased, black and white image from my pocket. As I handed it to her, I watched her face closely. Her brow furrowed in concentration, her lips pursed. She held the photo closer, her gaze fixed on the man's face. A moment of silence stretched between us, filled only by the buzzing of bees and the distant hum of traffic. Then, a soft gasp escaped her lips. A flicker of recognition, of somber memory, crossed her features. "Oh my dear," she whispered, her voice raspy with age and emotion. "I haven't seen this face in years. This is Arthur Pendleton." The name hung in the air, heavy with unspoken stories. She looked up from the photo, her eyes meeting mine, and I knew she had more to tell. She told me Arthur was a kind, quiet man, a skilled carpenter who could fix anything. He was known for his gentle smile and the sad, distant look that always seemed to be in his eyes. He and his wife Clara had a little girl. His daughter, Eleanor continued, her voice dropping lower. Her name was Lily, a beautiful child, with hair the color of sunshine and a laugh that could brighten the darkest day. She paused, taking a slow, deep breath as if the memory itself was a weight. One summer afternoon, when she was just 6 years old, she vanished. Just gone. They were at the town fair. Arthur turned his back for a second, just 1 second, and she was gone. The story sent a chill down my spine. Despite the warm afternoon sun, I could almost picture the scene, the cheerful chaos of the fair, the sudden gut-wrenching panic of a parent realizing their child is missing. Eleanor explained how the whole town searched for weeks. Police, volunteers, everyone combed the woods, the riverbanks, every street and alley, but they found nothing. Not a clue, not a trace of where little Lily might have gone. The tragedy shattered the Pendleton family. Clara, Arthur's wife, passed away from what the doctors called a broken heart just a few years later. But Arthur never gave up. He spent the rest of his life looking for her, Eleanor said, her eyes welling up with tears. Every spare moment, every cent he earned, it all went into the search. He traveled, put up posters, followed every single lead, no matter how faint. People started to whisper, you know, they said he'd lost his mind to grief. But it wasn't madness, it was hope, a desperate, undying hope. He lived out his days in that same house, a solitary figure haunted by a ghost. The rumor said he kept her room exactly as she had left it, waiting for the day she might return. He became a recluse, his heart break a wall between him and the world. He was the lonely man searching for his lost daughter. Suddenly, the strange drawing, the hidden key, the feeling of a presence in the house, it all started to make a different kind of sense. It wasn't a story of a specter. It was the story of a father's unending love and a loss that time could never heal. The truth was beginning to surface, and it was far more tragic and human than I could have ever imagined. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat I could feel in my throat. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it trembled as the words tumbled out. The man who lives there, the one with the sad eyes. What's his story? I asked my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, trying to sound casual, like I was just making small talk. She paused, her gardening gloves still covered in soil, and her expression softened with the deep, familiar sorrow. "Oh, you mean Mr. Allister?" she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Such a kind man, but he carries a heavy burden, a terrible weight." I held my breath, afraid to push but desperate to know more. "A burden?" I repeated, my own voice barely a whisper now. Mrs. Gable sighed, looking over at the quiet house next door. "Years ago, long before I moved here, he and his wife were in a dreadful car accident. It was a tragedy that shattered their world." She explained how they were on a family trip, a happy sunny day that turned dark in an instant. The details were sparse, fragments of a story passed down through neighborhood lore, but the core of it was devastatingly clear. "They lost their daughter in that accident," Mrs. Gable said, her eyes filled with a profound sympathy. Not in the way you might think. She single quotes, She survived the crash. But in the chaos, the confusion, she disappeared, vanished from the scene. My mind reeled. A lost child, a daughter who vanished. A cold dread, mixed with a bizarre electric current of possibility, snaked its way up my spine. The image of the man's face, etched with a grief so deep it seemed a permanent part of him, flashed in my mind. "They searched for years," Mrs. Gable continued, unaware of the storm brewing inside me, turned their lives upside down looking for her. His wife Eleanor, she never recovered from the heartbreak. She passed away a few years back, Still hoping, still waiting. Every word was a hammer blow, chipping away at the foundation of my own life. I was adopted. It was a fact I'd always known, a simple statement of my history. I loved my adoptive parents dearly. They were my world. But the chapter before them was a blank page. No names, no faces, no story. Just a closed file, and the quiet understanding that some things were unknowable. But now, things were starting to connect in a way that made my head spin. The first time I saw him, Mr. Alistair, there was that jolt, that inexplicable feeling of recognition. I'd dismissed it as a trick of the light, a random, fleeting thought. But his eyes, they were the same shade of hazel green as mine. I'd always been told I had my mother's eyes, but my adoptive mother's eyes were a warm, deep brown. I have her smile, her laugh, but not her eyes. The way his brow furrowed when he was lost in thought, a faint line appearing between his eyebrows, I did that too. I'd catch myself doing it in the mirror, a habit with no origin I could trace. The way he held his hands, clasped behind his back as he paced his garden, a posture of contemplation and worry, it felt familiar, like a memory I couldn't quite place. Was it possible? Could this all be a massive, heartbreaking coincidence? Or was I standing on the precipice of a truth I never thought I'd find? I mumbled my thanks to Mrs. Gable, my mind a whirlwind of questions and fragmented memories. I walked back to my own front door in a daze, the key fumbling in my hand. Inside, the silence of my apartment was deafening. I sank onto the sofa, my body feeling heavy and weak. The adoption papers were in a box in the top of my closet, a part of my past I hadn't looked at in years. Suddenly, I needed to see them. I needed to see the date, the city, any scrap of information that might confirm or deny the insane idea taking root in my soul. Pulling down the old cardboard box, I coughed as dust filled the air. My hands shook as I lifted the lid. There it was, a thin manila folder with my name on it. Inside, the legal documents were crisp and formal. I scanned the pages, my eyes darting over the legal jargon until I found what I was looking for. The date of the adoption, the location of the agency. It was a city 2 states over, a place I had no connection to. But the date, it was 3 months after the approximate time Mrs. Gable had mentioned for the accident. My blood ran cold. It wasn't proof, not even close, but it wasn't a denial either. It was a crack in the wall, a sliver of light in a room that had been dark my entire life. The man with the sad eyes, the lost daughter, the uncanny resemblance, it wasn't just in my head. The pieces were scattered, jumbled, but they were all on the table now. I felt a surge of fear, but beneath it, something else was growing, a fierce, undeniable resolve. I had to know. I had to find out if the ghost haunting the man next door was me. The next morning, I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. I just watched his house from my window, my heart a tangle of hope and terror. I saw him come out to get his mail, his movements slow and deliberate, as if every step cost him something. This couldn't be a coincidence. The pull I felt was too strong, the alignment of facts too precise. For the first time in my life, the blank pages of my past didn't feel empty. They felt like they were waiting to be filled. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that the story was waiting for me right next door. I had to talk to him. I had to ask. The thought alone was terrifying, but the thought of not knowing was unbearable. My past was no longer a closed book. It was a mystery, and I was finally ready to solve it. They just sat there, side by side, not saying a word. It was a silence filled with everything that had been left unsaid for years. All that distance, all that time, just melted away in a few quiet moments. It felt like a dream. She looked at him, this kind stranger who had just paid for her coffee, and it all clicked into place. Fate. It had to be fate that brought her to this exact cafe, at this exact time, on this exact day. The day her real father happened to be there. The man she had been searching for, unknowingly, her whole life. The wave of emotion that hit her was overwhelming. Tears started to stream down her face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of disbelief, of a joy so profound it was hard to breathe. He looked at her, his own eyes glistening, and a small trembling smile appeared on his face. It was a smile that said, "I've been waiting for you." He reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek, his touch sending a jolt of recognition through her. This was real. This was happening. In that instant, their lives were changed forever. The questions that had haunted her for so long finally had an answer. The empty space in his heart was suddenly full. It was a reunion born from a simple act of kindness, a cup of coffee that bridged a lifetime of separation. As the evening sun cast a warm golden glow over the city, they stood up, leaving the cafe behind. He put his arm around her, and for the first time, she felt what it was like to walk home with her father. 2 separate paths, 2 lonely journeys, had finally converged into one, all because of a single, beautiful twist of fate. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like, and subscribe to our channel for more content that will make you believe in the magic of everyday life. See you in the next one.
Weeks later, Daniel found himself walking up the familiar path to Mr. Harrison's house. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn, and a sense of calm settled over him. He wasn't just here to check in, he was here to express a gratitude that had been growing inside him for weeks. He knocked on the door, and soon it swung open to reveal Mr. Harrison, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. "Daniel, what a pleasant surprise. Come in, the old man said, ushering him into the cozy living room. The air smelled of old books and lemon polish. Daniel sat on the edge of the sofa, the same one where his life had taken such an unexpected turn. He had rehearsed what he wanted to say, but now, faced with Mr. Harrison's genuine warmth, the words felt inadequate. "Mr. Harrison," Daniel began, his voice earnest, "I came to thank you again. For everything, the job, the opportunity. You've truly changed my life." He looked around the room at the shelves filled with stories from around the world. "I'm learning so much at the company. It's more than I ever could have hoped for." Mr. Harrison listened patiently, his gaze steady. He let the silence hang in the air for a moment after Daniel finished, giving his words the weight they deserved. Then he leaned forward slightly, his expression kind but serious. "Daniel," he said softly, "I appreciate you coming here to say that. But you have it backward. I didn't give you anything you didn't already have." Daniel looked confused. "But sir, you gave me the job. You gave me a chance. I opened a door." "Yes," Mr. Harrison conceded with a nod. "But you were the one who knocked. You see, when you found that wallet, you had a choice. A simple one, really. A choice that thousands of people face every day in different ways. You could have taken the money and walked away. No one would have known. It would have been easy." He paused, letting that thought sink in. "But you didn't," he continued. "You went out of your way. You searched for the owner. You didn't do it because you were expecting a reward or hoping for some grand opportunity to fall into your lap. You did it because your conscience, your character, told you it was the right thing to do. That's a quality that can't be taught in a business school or bought with any amount of money." He gestured toward a framed photo on the mantelpiece, a picture of a younger Mr. Harrison with a team of colleagues. "In my years in business, I've met countless smart, ambitious, and talented people. But the ones who truly succeed, the ones who build things that last, are the ones with integrity, people you can trust. People who do the right thing even when no one is watching." Mr. Harrison's eyes met Daniel's again. "That's why I gave you the chance, Daniel. Not as a reward for returning a wallet, but because that single act showed me who you are. It was a glimpse into your character. You didn't return the wallet for a reward. You returned it because it was right, and that, my boy, is the kind of person the world desperately needs more of. Honest, reliable, and decent." A wave of understanding washed over Daniel. He had been so focused on the outcome, the job, the new life, that he hadn't fully appreciated the significance of the choice that started it all. It wasn't about the money in the wallet or the name on the ID. It was about his own internal compass. Mr. Harrison hadn't rewarded an action, he had recognized a quality. As Daniel walked home that evening, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Mr. Harrison's words echoed in his mind. He felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the job, but for the lesson. A simple act of honesty, a fleeting moment of choice, had opened a door he never even knew existed. His life had been irrevocably changed in a moment he could have so easily ignored, but he didn't. He realized that our lives are not just shaped by the big, dramatic events, but by the collection of small, everyday choices we make. The choice to be kind to a stranger, the choice to speak up for what's right, the choice to be honest when it would be easier to be dishonest. These are the moments that define us. That one decision, made on a busy street corner with a worn leather wallet in his hand, wasn't just about returning lost property. It was a testament to the person he was and the person he aspired to be. It was the key that unlocked his future, proving that true wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by the integrity you hold within. And Daniel walked on, no longer just an intern with a promising future, but a young man who understood the profound power of doing the right thing. Thank you so much for following along with Daniel's story. If his journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores the power of character and choice. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced a similar choice? Until next time, take care.